The ship Aurora Dawn moved slowly through space toward the distant planet. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, looking at the green and blue world growing larger on the screen. His team had traveled for 6 months to reach this place. Earth's sensors had picked up strange signals coming from here. The signals looked like they might come from intelligent life. "Captain, we're getting close," said Alex Rodriguez from his seat at the communication station. "The signals are getting stronger." Dr. Lisa Carter walked onto the bridge carrying her tablet. She was the team's expert on alien life. "The patterns are definitely not natural," she said. "Something down there is making organized sounds." Jake nodded. He had led many exploration missions, but this felt different. The signals were unlike anything humans had found before. They seemed to have structure like a language, but also something else mixed in. "Take us into orbit," Jake ordered. "But keep our distance. We don't want to scare anyone." The planet below had thick forests and wide plains. Mountains rose high above deep valleys. It looked like a good place for life to grow. As they got closer, their sensors picked up movement on the surface. Large groups of creatures moved through the forests in organized patterns. "I'm seeing what looks like settlements," Alex reported. "Primitive structures, but definitely built by someone." Lisa studied her readings. "The life forms are big, maybe twice the size of humans. They move in groups of 20 to 30 individuals." Jake watched the screen as their cameras zoomed in on the surface. He could see creatures that looked like large wolves walking on 2 legs. They had thick fur and long snouts. Some carried simple tools. They moved together like a pack, with one larger individual always in front. "Fascinating," Lisa whispered. "They have a clear social structure. Look how they follow that big one." The largest creature was indeed impressive. It was nearly 8 feet tall with dark gray fur and massive shoulders. When it moved, all the others followed without question. When it stopped, they all stopped. When it made a sound, they all listened. "That must be their leader," Jake said. "Some kind of alpha like in wolf packs back on Earth." They watched as the pack moved through the forest. The leader would point with his arm and the others would spread out in that direction. They seemed to be hunting something. The teamwork was clear, but it was also rigid. No one seemed to question the leader's orders. "Set up the observation post on that hill," Jake decided. "We need to watch them for a while before we make contact." The next day, they landed a small shuttle on a wooded hill about 2 miles from where the creatures lived. Jake, Lisa, and Alex set up their equipment while 2 security officers, Ryan Banks and Pete Williams, kept watch. From their hiding spot, they could see the creatures' daily life. The big leader, who they started calling Iron Jaw because of his massive teeth, ruled over everything. He decided when they ate, when they worked, and when they rested. The smaller creatures, especially the young ones, did whatever he said. "It's a very strict hierarchy," Lisa observed on their 3rd day of watching. "But look at the young ones. They seemed different." Jake looked through the telescope. The young creatures were indeed acting strangely. While the adults followed Ironjaw around, the cubs would wander off in small groups. They would gather in circles and make quiet sounds to each other. Sometimes they would draw patterns in the dirt with sticks. "They're more curious," Alex noted. "The adults just do their jobs, but the young ones explore everything." One group of 3 cubs caught their attention. These 3 were always together, and they seemed smarter than the others. They would find unusual rocks and study them carefully. They built small structures with sticks and stones. Most interesting of all, they seemed to be listening to something the others ignored. "What are they listening to?" Jake wondered. Alex checked his equipment. "Our communication signals," he said with surprise. "Captain, they're picking up our radio transmissions." Lisa leaned forward with excitement. "That's impossible. Those signals are way too complex for primitive minds to understand." But as they watched, the 3 cubs tilted their heads toward the sky whenever the humans sent messages to their ship. The cubs would look at each other and make soft sounds, almost like they were trying to copy what they heard. "Are they trying to learn our language?" Jake asked. "It can't be," Lisa said. "Language learning that fast would require incredible intelligence." Yet the evidence was right in front of them. Over the next few days, the cubs' sounds started to change. They were making noises that sounded almost like human words. Simple sounds at first, but getting more complex each day. Meanwhile, Ironjaw seemed to have no idea what his cubs were doing. He was too busy maintaining his control over the adult pack members. He would roar orders and expect instant obedience. Any creature that was too slow or asked questions would get a harsh punishment. The humans watched one terrible scene where a young adult questioned why they had to hunt in a certain area. Ironjaw knocked him down with one powerful blow and stood over him, growling. The message was clear, no questions allowed. He rules through fear, Ryan observed. Classic authoritarian behavior. But the cubs don't seem afraid, Pete added. They're too busy learning. Jake realized they had discovered something extraordinary. These were not just primitive pack animals. At least some of them had the ability to learn and think in ways their own society didn't recognize or value. We need to be very careful here, Jake said. If we make contact with Ironjaw, we might destroy any chance those cubs have to develop their abilities. But Earth Command wants us to establish formal relations with the leadership, Alex reminded him. That means talking to the Alpha. Lisa was still watching the cubs through her telescope. Look at this, she said softly. The 3 cubs had arranged small stones in a perfect mathematical sequence. It was a pattern that showed understanding of numbers and relationships. No primitive animal could do such a thing. They're intelligent, Lisa whispered. Really intelligent. But their own society is holding them back. Jake felt the weight of a difficult decision ahead. Earth's orders were clear. Make contact with the planet's leaders and establish diplomatic relations. But what if the real future of this species lay not with the current leaders, but with the young ones who were teaching themselves to think in new ways? As the sun set over the alien forest, the 3 cubs looked up at the stars. They seemed to know that something important was happening, even if they didn't understand what it was yet. Jake made a choice that would change everything. We wait, he said. We watch and we learn. And maybe, just maybe, we help those cubs find their voice. None of them knew that the cubs were already planning something that would shake their world to its core. The 3 cubs had names for each other, though the humans didn't know this yet. The smallest one, with silver fur and bright eyes, was called Zephyr by his friends. The middle one, with patches of black and white fur, was Nova. The largest of the 3, with deep brown fur and a white mark on her forehead, was Raven. For weeks now, they had been listening to the strange sounds from the sky. At first, the sounds meant nothing, but slowly patterns began to form in their minds. The sounds had rhythm and structure. They were not random noise. They were communication. Listen, Zephyr whispered to his friends as they sat in their secret spot behind the big rocks. The sky voices are talking again. The radio signals from the human ship came through clearly in this place. The cubs had discovered that if they sat very still and focused, they could hear individual words. Words that meant things. Captain, mission, planet, Nova repeated slowly. These were some of the first human words she had learned. Raven was the smartest of the 3. She understood that these words belonged to the flying creatures they had seen in the distance, the ones that Ironjaw pretended didn't exist even though everyone had seen their strange nest on the hill. They're watching us, Raven said quietly. Just like we're watching them. The cubs had been careful. Ironjaw had strict rules about wandering off and asking questions. Cubs were supposed to follow orders, learn to hunt, and prepare to serve the pack. They were not supposed to think about strange things or make their own discoveries. But these 3 cubs were different. They had always been curious about the world beyond their forest. When the flying creatures arrived, their curiosity became impossible to ignore. Every day they learned more human words. Simple ones at first, yes, no, good, bad, help, danger. Then more complex ideas, together, different, learn, understand, freedom. That last word, freedom, was the most dangerous one of all. In their society, freedom was not a concept that existed. You served the pack or you were cast out to die alone. There was no middle ground. Meanwhile, Ironjaw grew more suspicious of his cubs each day. He noticed they were spending time away from the group. He saw them making strange marks in the dirt and gathering unusual objects. This was not normal cub behavior. You 3, he growled one morning, standing over them with his massive frame. What are you doing out here? Playing, Alpha, Zephyr answered quickly. Just playing with rocks. Ironjaw's yellow eyes narrowed. Cubs should not play. Cubs should learn to hunt and fight. These rocks serve no purpose. He kicked over their carefully arranged stone patterns with one powerful foot. Weeks of work destroyed in seconds, but he didn't see the look that passed between the 3 friends. They weren't just playing, they were practicing. Practicing the number patterns they had heard in the human transmissions. Find useful work, Ironjaw commanded before walking away. The cubs waited until he was gone, then quickly rebuilt their patterns from memory. They had become very good at remembering things. On the hill, the humans continued their observation. They had been watching for almost a month now, and the cubs' behavior was becoming more remarkable each day. "Look at this," Lisa said, showing Jake her latest recordings. "They're not just copying random sounds anymore. They're using human words in the right context." The recordings showed the cubs pointing at objects and saying human words for them: tree, rock, water, sky. They were building a vocabulary. How is this possible? Jake wondered. "We're seeing language acquisition at an impossible speed." Alex had been monitoring their communications more carefully. "Captain, I think they're not just listening to our regular transmissions. They're somehow picking up our internal ship communications too, the routine stuff we use for daily operations." This was concerning. If the cubs could understand human communications, they might learn things that could be dangerous in the wrong hands. But Jake also felt a growing excitement. This level of intelligence suggested these creatures could become true partners, not just primitive contacts. "We need to be more careful about what we broadcast," he decided, "but keep monitoring their progress." Back in the forest, the cubs were having their own discussions about the humans. They had learned enough words to have simple conversations about what they observed. The flying ones worked together, Nova said in careful human words, practicing her pronunciation. No alpha commands all. This was a shocking concept. In every pack they knew, one strong leader controlled everything, but the humans seemed to make decisions together, talking and sharing ideas before acting. "Maybe different is possible," Raven suggested, using another word they had learned. Zephyr looked worried. "Ironjaw would be very angry if he heard us talking like this." They all knew this was true. Speaking the sky language would be seen as betrayal of the pack. But they couldn't stop themselves from learning. The human way of thinking was too interesting, too full of possibilities they had never imagined. As the days passed, their secret meetings became bolder. They started leaving messages for each other using human letters they had figured out from listening to spelled-out words in the transmissions. Simple messages at first. "Meet here tomorrow." "Found new rocks." "Ironjaw coming." But gradually their messages became more complex. They wrote about ideas that had no words in their own language. Ideas about choice, equality, and cooperation. Other cubs began to notice their strange behavior. Some were curious and wanted to learn too. Others were frightened and threatened to tell Ironjaw. The three friends had to be very careful about who they trusted. One evening, as they practiced human words in their hidden spot, they overheard a conversation between Ironjaw and his closest followers. "The cubs are acting strange," one adult said. "They spend too much time alone. They don't focus on pack duties." "I've noticed," Ironjaw rumbled. "Cubs who cannot follow simple rules become adults who question authority. Perhaps it's time for a culling." The cubs looked at each other with fear. A culling meant Ironjaw would remove the cubs he considered weak or defiant. Some would be exiled. Others might be killed as examples to the rest. "We need help," Zephyr whispered in human words. "The flying ones," Nova suggested. "They might understand," Raven thought carefully. Making contact with the humans would be the ultimate betrayal in Ironjaw's eyes, but it might also be their only chance to survive and continue learning. "How do we talk to them?" she asked. They spent that night planning. They knew where the humans had their watching place. They had seen the strange tools pointed toward their forest. If they could get close enough, maybe they could try speaking the sky language. Maybe the humans would listen. The next morning, Ironjaw announced new rules. All cubs would stay close to the main camp. No more wandering off. No more playing with useless objects. Any cub caught disobeying would face punishment. The three friends exchanged glances. Their time was running out. Soon they would have to choose between safety and the incredible new world of ideas they had discovered. That night, as the pack slept, they made their decision. Tomorrow they would try to make contact with the humans. They would speak the sky language and hope these strange creatures would understand that not all of Ironjaw's pack wanted to live under his harsh rule. They had learned about freedom from the humans' words. Now they would find out if freedom was something they could actually achieve, or just another concept that existed only in the sky language they had learned to love. Dr. Lisa Carter was collecting plant samples near the rocky slope when the accident happened. She had wandered further from the observation post than usual, excited about finding a new species of flowering vine. The soil was loose from recent rains, and when she stepped on what looked like solid ground, the rocks gave way beneath her feet. She tumbled 15 feet down the slope, landing hard against a boulder. Pain shot through her left leg, and she knew immediately that something was wrong. When she tried to stand, her leg wouldn't support her weight. "Help!" she called out, hoping her team would hear her. Back at the observation post, Pete Williams heard her cry and grabbed his radio. "Alex, we have a problem. Lisa's hurt and she's down in the rocks." Jake and Alex rushed to help while Ryan stayed with the equipment. They could see Lisa below them, sitting against a rock and holding her leg. The slope was too steep and unstable for them to climb down safely without proper gear. "We need rope and medical supplies," Jake said. "Alex, call the ship for a medical team." But as Alex reached for his communications equipment, they heard something that made them all freeze. Voices speaking in clear, accented English. "She is hurt. We can help her." 3 figures emerged from the forest below. They were the cubs the humans had been watching for weeks. The smallest one, with silver fur, was speaking directly to Lisa. "You understand us," Lisa said in amazement, forgetting about her pain for a moment. "Yes," said the one with brown fur and a white mark on her forehead. "We have been learning your language. We have been waiting for a chance to talk to you." Jake and Alex stared down at the impossible scene. The cubs they had observed from a distance were having a conversation with their injured teammate. "Can you really help her?" Jake called down. The middle cub, with black and white patches, nodded. "Raven knows about injuries. She learned from watching our healers." Raven approached Lisa carefully. "May I look at your leg?" she asked politely. Lisa nodded, still shocked by the situation. Raven examined the injury with surprisingly gentle hands. Her large fingers were more dexterous than they appeared. "The bone is not broken," Raven announced, "but the soft parts are hurt. You need to keep the leg still and high up." Zephyr and Nova worked together to gather soft moss and straight branches. They built a simple but effective splint for Lisa's leg, showing knowledge of basic medical care that impressed even Jake. "Where did you learn to do this?" Lisa asked. "From listening and watching," Nova explained. "We learn everything we can. It is what we do." While they worked, the cubs explained how they had been studying the humans for weeks. They had learned not just the language but concepts about cooperation, science, and different ways of living. "Your pack works together without fear," Zephyr observed. "This is very different from our way." Jake climbed carefully down to join them, followed by Alex and Pete. For the first time, humans and Cathera stood face to face in peaceful contact. "We have much to learn from each other," Jake said. "Yes," Raven agreed. "But there is danger. Our alpha, the one you call Ironjaw, does not want change. He would be very angry if he knew we were talking to you." Nova looked worried. "He has threatened to hurt cubs who act strangely. We are running out of time." Lisa, now comfortable with her makeshift splint, looked at each of the young creatures. "How many of you think like this? How many want something different?" "Many," Zephyr said. "But they are afraid. Ironjaw's rule is harsh. Cubs who question anything are punished or sent away." Alex asked the question they were all thinking. "What do you want from us?" Raven's answer surprised them with its clarity. "We want to learn about freedom. We want to know how your pack works without an alpha who controls everything. We want to try a different way." "But that would mean changing your entire society," Pete pointed out. "Yes," Nova said simply. "That is what we want. But we cannot do it alone." Jake felt the weight of an enormous decision. Earth Command had sent them to make contact with the established leadership of this planet. They were supposed to negotiate with Ironjaw, not support a revolution by his cubs. But looking at these intelligent, hopeful young creatures, Jake realized that the real future of this species might not lie with their current leaders. "If we help you," Jake said carefully, "what exactly are you planning to do?" The 3 cubs looked at each other. Then Raven spoke for all of them. "We have been talking to other young ones. We have a plan to challenge the old ways during the next pack gathering, but we need witnesses. We need someone to record what happens so other packs will know that change is possible." "When is this gathering?" Alex asked. "In 3 days," Zephyr replied. "All the pack must attend. It is our law." Lisa tried to stand with help from Pete. "This is incredible. You're talking about a peaceful revolution." "We learned about this from your transmissions," Nova said. "You spoke of times when humans changed their ways without violence. We want to try this." Jake knew he had to make a choice that could affect his career and Earth's relationship with this planet. But he also knew that supporting these intelligent, progressive young creatures was the right thing to do. "What kind of help do you need?" he asked. Raven smiled. showing that even their facial expressions had adapted to human communication. Help us prove that cooperation works better than domination. Help us show our pack that there is another way to live. As they helped Lisa back to the observation post, the cubs explained more of their plan. They had been secretly teaching other young Kythera about human concepts. They had learned about democracy, science, and peaceful problem-solving. But we need proof that these ideas work, Zephyr explained. We need to show our people that your way is not just sky talk, but real. There are others like you? Alex asked. Yes, Nova said. Many others. We call ourselves the listening pack. We listen to new ideas instead of just following old rules. When they reached the observation post, Jake contacted the ship. He explained the situation to his commanding officers, knowing that this report would create problems back on Earth. Sir, we've made contact with intelligent young members of the species. They're requesting assistance with social reform. I believe we should support them. The response from Earth Command was swift and negative. Negative, Captain Morrison. You are ordered to make contact with established leadership only. Do not interfere with internal politics. Jake looked at the three cubs who had risked everything to make contact. They were standing quietly, trying to understand the human words coming from the radio. What did your alpha say? Raven asked. Jake faced another moment of choice. He could follow orders and contact Ironjaw, potentially dooming these remarkable young creatures. Or he could follow his conscience and help them create a better future for their species. He said we need to think carefully about how to proceed, Jake said, which was not exactly a lie. The cubs nodded, understanding that human politics were also complicated. We will wait, Zephyr said, but not long. The gathering comes soon and we must be ready. As evening fell, Jake watched the cubs disappear back into the forest. Tomorrow, he would have to decide whether to follow orders or do what he believed was right. Either way, the relationship between humans and Kythera would never be the same. The cubs had opened a door that could never be closed again. Echo was the one they called when difficult problems needed solving. She was not the largest or strongest of the young Kythera, but her mind worked differently than the others. While most cubs learned by copying what adults did, Echo learned by asking why things worked the way they did. She had been listening to the three friends talk about their meeting with the humans. The news spread quickly through the secret network of young Kythera who had been learning and questioning. So the sky creatures really can be trusted? Asked Pine, a young male with golden fur who had been skeptical of the whole idea. Yes, Raven confirmed. They want to help us, but they have rules from their own pack that make it difficult. Echo thought about this. She had been studying human concepts for months, learning from the radio signals and from what Zephyr, Nova, and Raven shared with the group. She understood that humans had something called politics, which was like pack dynamics but more complex. We need to make it easy for them to help us, Echo said. We need to show their leaders that helping us helps them too. There were now almost 30 young Kythera in their secret network. They met in small groups in different places so Ironjaw wouldn't notice. Each group had learned different things from listening to human transmissions and studying human behavior. One group had learned about science and problem solving. Another had studied cooperation and teamwork. A third group focused on communication and negotiation. Echo coordinated between all the groups, building a complete picture of how humans lived and worked. The pack gathering is tomorrow, Echo reminded everyone. Are we ready? The plan was ambitious and dangerous. During the gathering, when all adult pack members would be present, the young Kythera would present their case for a new way of organizing their society. They would demonstrate human concepts like democracy, scientific thinking, and peaceful conflict resolution. If they succeeded, they could change their entire civilization. If they failed, Ironjaw would probably exile or kill them all. Remember, Echo said, we are not trying to hurt anyone. We are trying to show a better way. The humans taught us that change doesn't have to come through violence. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison faced his own crisis. Commander Lisa Hayes had arrived from Earth with a military escort and very clear orders. Captain Morrison, Hayes said as she stood on the bridge of the Aurora Dawn, you will establish contact with the leadership of this planet immediately. Earth Command wants a formal treaty within the week. Commander, the situation is more complex than our original briefing suggested, Jake replied carefully. Hayes was not interested in complexity. She was a career military officer who believed in following orders and getting results. I don't care about complexity, Captain. I care about results. Make contact with their alpha and negotiate our terms. Lisa Carter, still limping from her injury, tried to explain. Commander, the young members of the species are far more intelligent and reasonable than their current leader. If we work with them, we could establish a much better relationship. Dr. Carter, we don't negotiate with children, human or alien, Hayes replied coldly. We deal with those in power. Jake knew that contacting Ironjaw now would doom the Cubs' plans, but he also knew that disobeying direct orders could end his career and maybe land him in prison. Give me 24 hours, Jake requested. Let me assess the situation and prepare a proper approach. Hayes looked annoyed but agreed. 24 hours, Captain. Then we make contact whether you think the situation is ready or not. That evening, Jake met secretly with the 3 Cubs at the edge of the forest. He explained the pressure he was facing from his own leaders. Your alpha wants you to talk to our alpha. Raven understood immediately. Yes, Jake said, but I think that would be bad for all of us. Ironjaw won't want to share power with humans any more than he wants to share it with you. Zephyr had been thinking about this problem. What if we change things before your alpha forces you to talk to Ironjaw? What do you mean? Alex asked. What if by tomorrow night Ironjaw is no longer our alpha? Nova suggested. Echo emerged from the shadows where she had been listening. Jake had not met her before, but he could see immediately that this was a different kind of intelligence. Where the other Cubs were enthusiastic learners, Echo was a strategic thinker. You are Jake Morrison, she said in perfect English. Your pack calls you captain. This means you lead, but your leaders can remove you if they disagree with your choices. That's correct, Jake said, impressed by her understanding. Our problem is the same, Echo continued. Both our peoples have leaders who prefer the old ways, but both our peoples have young members who want better ways, she explained her plan. The young Kythera would use the pack gathering to demonstrate that they had learned valuable skills from the humans. They would show that cooperation and intelligence could solve problems that force and tradition could not. But we need proof that human ways work, Echo said. We need a problem that the old ways cannot solve, but the new ways can. As if summoned by her words, Alex's radio crackled with an urgent message from the ship. Captain Morrison, we're detecting 3 unidentified vessels approaching the system. They appear to be armed and are not responding to our communications. Pirates. Jake had heard reports of raider groups operating in this sector, attacking isolated planets and settlements. How long until they arrive? Jake asked. 6 hours, maybe less. Echo looked at Jake with bright, intelligent eyes. This is our chance, she said. Ironjaw will want to hide or fight in the old way. We can show him a better way. What do you have in mind? Jake asked. Humans and Kythera working together, Echo replied. Your technology and our knowledge of this world. Your planning and our speed. Your weapons and our tactics. It was a bold plan, but Jake could see the possibilities. The approaching threat could provide exactly the demonstration the Cubs needed to prove their point. We'll need to convince both our leaders, Jake warned. Leave Ironjaw to us, Echo said confidently. You convince your Commander Hayes that working with us is better than fighting alone. As they prepared to return to their respective camps, Raven asked the question they were all thinking. What if this doesn't work? What if we fail? Echo's answer showed the courage that had made her their leader. Then we fail trying to build something better. That is still better than succeeding at keeping things the same. Jake returned to his ship knowing that the next 24 hours would determine the future of 2 species. He had to convince a stubborn military commander to trust alien Cubs, while those same Cubs had to convince a tyrannical alpha to accept help from the strange creatures he considered threats. The approaching pirates had no idea they were about to become part of a test that would prove whether cooperation could triumph over domination and whether the future belonged to those who clung to power or those brave enough to imagine a better way. As dawn approached, both humans and Kythera prepared for a day that would change everything. The question was whether they would meet the coming challenges separately as they always had, or together, as they had never dared to try before. The pack gathering took place in the great clearing where Ironjaw held all important ceremonies. Every adult Kythera was required to attend, and Cubs were expected to watch silently from the edges. This was where pack law was declared and where Ironjaw demonstrated his absolute authority. But today would be different. Ironjaw stood in the center of the clearing, his massive frame casting a shadow across the gathered pack. He had called this meeting to address the growing disobedience among the cubs and to reassert his control. Cubs have been acting strangely, he announced in his deep, commanding voice. Some have been seen making marks in the dirt. Others have been gathering useless objects. This ends today. Echo and her friends sat with the other young Kithara at the edge of the clearing. They had spent the morning preparing for this moment, and they knew it was their only chance. From now on, Ironjaw continued, cubs will stay close to the pack at all times. No more wandering. No more playing with rocks and sticks. Cubs who disobey will be removed from the pack. The adult Kithara nodded their approval. This was the kind of strong leadership they understood and respected. But then Echo stood up. Alpha Ironjaw, she said in clear, careful words. May I speak? A shocked silence fell over the gathering. Cubs never spoke at pack meetings unless specifically called upon, and when they did speak, it was never to address the Alpha directly. Ironjaw's yellow eyes blazed with anger. Cubs do not speak at gatherings. Sit down, but Echo remained standing. I request the right of challenge, she said. Now the silence was complete. The right of challenge was an ancient law that allowed any pack member to contest the Alpha's decisions, if they could prove a better way existed. But it had never been used by a cub and certainly never by a female. You dare challenge me? Ironjaw snarled. Not you, Echo replied calmly. Your methods. I challenge the idea that strength and fear are the only ways to lead. Ironjaw laughed, a harsh sound that echoed across the clearing. Foolish cub. You think your small body can defeat me in combat? No, Echo said. I think my ideas can defeat your ideas. I propose a different kind of challenge. She gestured to the sky where the human ship was visible as a small dot. Strange visitors have come to our world. They have weapons and technology we cannot match. Under the old ways, we would either hide from them or try to fight them and be destroyed. We fear no one, Ironjaw declared. Then you will be interested to know that 3 enemy ships are approaching our world, Echo continued. Ships with weapons that could destroy our entire pack from a great distance. This news caused murmurs of concern among the adults. They looked to Ironjaw for guidance, but he seemed as surprised as they were. How do you know this? He demanded. Because we have been learning from the visitors, Echo replied. Learning their language, their ways, their knowledge. And they have warned us of the danger. Zephyr, Nova, and Raven stood up to join Echo. Then, one by one, the other young Kithara rose as well. Nearly half the cubs in the pack were now standing in silent support. We propose to solve this problem using cooperation instead of domination, Echo announced. If we succeed, the pack survives and grows stronger. If we fail, you can exile us all as you planned. Ironjaw looked around the clearing, seeing the determination in the cubs' faces and the uncertainty in the adults' expressions. He was trapped by his own pride and the ancient laws he had always used to maintain power. Fine, he growled. Show me this cooperation. When it fails, I will exile every cub who participated in this foolishness. What happened next would be remembered as the day 2 species learned to work together. The human ship landed in the clearing, and Commander Hayes emerged with Captain Morrison and his team. The adult Kithara backed away nervously, but Ironjaw stood his ground, trying to project strength despite his obvious anxiety. I am Ironjaw, Alpha of this pack, he announced. I am Commander Hayes, came the reply through Alex's translation device. We need to discuss the approaching threat to your world. But it was Echo who took control of the situation. Speaking in fluent English, she addressed both the human commander and her own pack leader. The enemy ships will arrive in 2 hours, she explained. They have powerful weapons, but they expect to find a primitive world with no defenses. We can use this expectation against them. She outlined a plan that combined human technology with Kithara knowledge of the terrain. The humans would provide sensor data and communications, while the Kithara would use their speed and stealth to move into position around the landing zones the pirates would most likely choose. Your people know this land better than any scanner can show, Jake explained to Ironjaw, and our technology can coordinate your movements in ways that would be impossible otherwise. Ironjaw listened to the plan with growing amazement. It was more sophisticated than anything he had ever imagined, but it also required him to accept help from outsiders and to trust the judgment of cubs. This could work, admitted Storm, Ironjaw's most trusted advisor, but it means following a plan made by cubs and strangers. The debate was interrupted by urgent signals from the human ship. The pirate vessels had arrived ahead of schedule and were already beginning their descent toward the planet. "We have to decide now," Commander Hayes announced. "Do we work together or fight separately?" Ironjaw looked at Echo, seeing not just a rebellious cub but a leader who had found solutions where he saw only problems. For the first time in his life, he faced a situation where his traditional methods were not enough. "Tell me what you need," he said quietly. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of coordinated activity. Human technology guided Kithra warriors to perfect ambush positions. Kithra knowledge of hidden trails allowed humans to place their weapons where they would be most effective. Young and old, native and alien, all worked together with the efficiency that amazed everyone involved. When the pirates landed, expecting to find helpless primitives, they instead walked into a perfectly coordinated trap. The battle was over before it really began. As the captured pirates were led away, Ironjaw stood in the clearing where the pack gathering had begun. Around him, humans and Kithara worked together to clean up the aftermath of their victory. "You were right," he said to Echo. "Your way worked better than mine." Echo looked at the former Alpha with respect. "Both ways were needed," she replied. "Your strength and our new ideas, your experience and our willingness to change." A week later, Jake Morrison filed his final report on the Kepler 442c mission. Instead of a standard first contact agreement, he submitted a proposal for a joint human-Kithra exploration program. "The young Kithra have demonstrated exceptional ability to learn and adapt," he wrote. "They represent the future of their species and potential valuable partners for humanity. I recommend establishing a cultural exchange program that will benefit both our peoples." Echo became the first elected leader in Kythera history, chosen not by strength or tradition but by the free choice of her people. She established a council that included both progressive young voices and respected elders, willing to embrace change. Ironjaw, rather than accept exile or diminished status, chose to become an advisor on matters of security and defense. His strength and experience, combined with the new ideas of the young generation, made the pack stronger than it had ever been. The first joint human-Kithra exploration ship launched 6 months later. Its crew included young humans and Kithera, learning from each other as equals, exploring the galaxy with the combined benefits of human technology and Kithera adaptability. And on the bridge of that ship, a young human communications officer worked alongside a Kithara navigator, who had once been called Zephyr by her friends, but now went by her chosen human name, Hope. The cubs who had once spoken human in secret now spoke for their entire species among the stars, proving that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from those who demand obedience, but from those who have the courage to imagine a better way forward. In his final log entry, Jake Morrison wrote, "We came here to make contact with an alien species. Instead, we discovered that the future belongs not to those who rule through fear, but to those brave enough to learn, grow, and build something better together.